I'm Aubrey Sitterson, and this is SKALD. You're about to hear a single chapter of an ongoing fantasy narrative, one I've written to be heard, not read. My voice, it's the only instrument, the only method of delivery, and it's all done in one single, flawless take. SKALD is serialized, which means we pick up exactly where we left off last time, so it might be a good idea to go back and start from the beginning. It's up to you, though. This isn't me reading you a story. This is me telling you a story. This is SKALD, Part 5. I'll give you the same choice you gave my family. Enleth, Queen of the Elves, shifted her weight, ready to spring. You can die standing or on your knees. It was dark, but the glowing elven armor of Enleth and her royal guard illuminated the marketplace as they surrounded the junkie Rorg, the drug dealer Gradoon, the confused, overwhelmed city guard, and of course, the focus of their hunt, Maul, the self-proclaimed king of men. Don't do this, Enleth. I know you don't want to. I've always loved you. You love me? Even under the gleaming plate metal, Maul could see Enleth shaking in rage, in disbelief, in righteous fury. You murdered my family. After we took you in, raised you as one of our own, you murdered them all in cold blood. They were in my way. Enleth's warriors braced themselves as Maul staggered forward, teeth bared like a cornered animal, because that's exactly what he was. So you took their lives? Children? The elderly? The man who treated you like a son? A son he stole, forsook, and imprisoned. They tied me to that tree for a decade. 10 long years I hung there, alone. We allowed you your pet. It was more than you deserved. And were we not right to do it? Freed for less than a day, and look what horrors you unleashed upon our realm. I had to. You had to dig out their hearts. You had to do it with your bare hands. Feeding off their queen's rage, the warriors closed in, tightening their formation like a noose around Maul's neck. I had no choice. It's what he required. So there it is. You made a pact with him. You chose your fate. You were not abandoned. You were not forsaken. You forsook yourself. You gave up anything remotely resembling civility. You're nothing more than a beast, a rabid dog that I will put down, just as my weak-willed and now dead father should have done a decade ago. Maul stood, jaw clenched, mustering every ounce of strength to stay standing, mustering every bit of self-control not to launch into a berserker fury. I may be a beast, but I'm a beast that loves you, Enleth. Hold your tongue. Bite it off. You don't love me. You blaspheme the word by even speaking it aloud. Then why do you think I spared you? I let you live, hoping that one day you'd come to your senses, that we'd join our lines, our houses, our worlds, as was prophesied. That you'd join me and rule both our planes, together and forever, forever and together. The same thing I've always wanted. You and I joined in power. It's why I went back on my bargain with him, why he punished me, why I'm stranded here with nothing but addiction, madness, and agony. It's all because of you, my love for you, and the fact that I spared your life. Enleth shook her head slowly. Spare me your excuses. You didn't make a noble choice to spare me. You were afraid to face me, and you waited to strike until I was gone like the low, cowardly vermin that you are. You were scared to face me in battle, scared of what I would have done to you then and what I shall do to you now. Maul, holding his cudgel at his side, raised his other hand. I won't hurt you, Enleth. I know you won't have a chance. As Maul stood, choking his bloodlust down, bile rising up in his throat to take its place, Enleth cried out to her warriors. Kill them all. Take what you wish, but the beast is mine, and mine alone. The city guard, fattened by corruption, weakened by a lack of opposition, debauched by overconfidence, never stood a chance. The elven warriors washed over them like waves crashing on the beach with just as much resistance. The guards held up their hands. They cowered and cried. They pleaded and begged for mercy. They swore their allegiance to the terrible beauty of the elf queen. They promised riches, gold, and servitude. But to no avail. There's a difference between loving combat and loving power, between loving the struggle and loving the result. These cowardly bullies knew only the latter, infatuated with the feeling of omnipotence that comes from imposing your will on another, but with no taste for the bittersweet flavor of actual strife. And thus, their slaughter is deserving of even fewer words than they have already been granted. As the elven warriors cut down the city guard brutally, mercilessly, efficiently, Maul maneuvered for position. It was true. He had no desire to hurt Enleth, but that wasn't why he backed away from combat. An act that at any other time would be anathema to a warrior born, such as Maul. No. The reason Maul retreated from Enleth, swinging her shining sword, leaving arcs of glowing light in the heavy night air, was because she was right. Maul was outclassed, and he knew it. Completely healthy, Maul would at least have had a chance, with his berserker rage boiling over and fueling a frenzied attack that would be a formidable challenge to even one as highly trained as Queen Enleth. But now, with his grinding bones and shattered psyche making both movement and thought excruciating, there was no hope of Maul besting the Elf Queen, with her flawless technique, impregnable armor, and that gleaming sword, forged in the cataclysm that sundered the worlds and passed down through countless generations of Enleth's royal ancestors. But Maul, trapped in an alley, knew that he could not make a true retreat. As he dodged Enleth's careful, calculated swings, staying clear of the sword while giving up as little ground as possible, the elven warriors turned their deadly gaze upon the junky veteran, Rorg. He was surrounded, with no hope of survival, not even the life of slavery offered by the city guard. A feeling coursed through Rorg's blood that he hadn't felt in many a long year. Abandon. Complete and reckless abandon. With everything he had gone, with nothing left to lose, Rorg let out a blood-curdling yell, the howl of the aged wolf abandoned by his pack, the final roar of a once great beast left to die of exposure, the cry of a being who has come to terms with the specter of death that had long haunted him. The howl was terrifying, striking all of the combatants at the core of their being, as even the most hardened warriors find their resolve shaken by the cry of one who has embraced the void. Rorg launched himself at the nearest elven warrior. Though he had slowed, though he had weakened, the muscle memory came back quickly as his knobby hands went right for a gap near the warrior's throat. Rorg had no weapon. He had no way to pierce the plate mail, but his hands knew exactly how to slip between the plates of armor and grasp the precious neck they protected. Rorg was once a warrior, and he had become one again. Though he would not win this battle, he would not meet his fate on his knees. He would clutch the elf's neck, he would squeeze with all his might, and he would embrace the void. It was with that final, triumphant thought coursing through his mind that the long elvish pike ran Rorg through, and the void embraced him. Though Rorg had betrayed him, ushering him into the agony of anchor addiction, he had also been Maul's salvation. And thus, Maul saw his passing as that of a comrade in arms. Emboldened, Maul commanded his aching arms to attention. Brandishing his club, he parried Enleth's relentless, tireless attacks. She could see that Maul was in dire straits. She knew that she had him dead to rights, but she also knew that the death of this filthy savage was something to be savored. She wouldn't strike him down with one fell blow. That was never her intention. If it were, she would have taken the cowardly route. She would have filled him with arrows upon first sight. No, she wanted this beast to suffer, to feel the pain and terror of impending doom, the same feeling that her family had suffered through at his blood-stained hands. She wanted him to know true, primal, helpless fear as she dug out his heart and showed it to him, eyes glazed over with agony, kept alive beyond all mortal boundaries for as long as her court wizards could manage. He had taken her family, and she would take every ounce of joy she could from his demise. As Enleth adjusted her approach, changing up her stance to account for Maul's club and the modified technique he displayed, Maul heard a familiar, terrified, frantic voice. "Get me out of here, please. You can have as much anchor as you wish." The offer was a tempting one. If he could but escape, he could embrace the anchor, that divine salve of the mind, the crutch that eases the wise man's burden. He could tie it around his neck, then dive into the sea of his troubled mind, free to plummet into the deep, dark, forgetful depths, never to awaken, never to want, never to suffer ever again. But no. Maul had a different destiny, a better fate. The throne, the realm, vindication, blood, tears, hungry fires, seas of ashes. Maul saw it all, waiting for him, his for the taking, and with the flames of desire flaring in his eyes, he dropped his cudgel, then grabbed Gradoon by his long, furry, spindly limbs, swinging him from side to side, clearing the way in front of him before hurling the screeching drug dealer directly at the last remaining member of the Elven royal line. Enleth nimbly hopped out of Gradoon's path, laughing at Maul's desperate gambit. But it was never his intention to actually strike the Queen of the Elves. No, his plan was what came next. The elven warriors busied themselves with striking down Gradoon, as they were trained from birth to do to anyone who threatened the royal family. But as they sunk their steel into that spider-like creature, Maul's eyes, hazy from addiction and encroaching madness, were still keen enough to see it. An opening. Maul scooped up his cudgel and charged, barreling toward a momentary gap in that line of shining elven plate. He didn't run so much as he flung himself, springing off the ground, swinging his arms in wide arcs to clear the way. The darkness of the abandoned marketplace was ahead, beckoning him. Mere yards away, if he could but make it through their line and into the darkness, he would have a chance, however minuscule, to escape and continue his quest. The first shield slammed into him from his right side, forcing his shoulder out of its socket, stretching the tendons to their physical limits, but there was no time to feel the pain of a dislocated shoulder as the second elven shield crashed into his skull, dazing him, dropping him to his knees. Then it was the boots. Nimble, hateful elven feet clad in leather, then draped in steel, striking his kidneys, between his ribs, his groin, all the soft places that hurt the most. Maul blacked out. Briefly. But came to as one of the warriors slapped him across the face. His rags ripped open at the chest, his arms and legs pinned down by scowling elves. Maul's fate was sealed. Enleth crouched above him, her gleaming sword traded for a wicked dagger that she held above Maul's heart. "I will kill you once now, and I shall spend every ounce of gold in my hoard to bring you back again and again. Killing you is the only reason I still draw breath, and so I shall take your life over and over until death comes for me as well." Enleth closed her eyes and began to chant the names of her family. The father, the mother, the siblings, the grandparents, the aunts, uncles, and cousins that Maul had slaughtered in his name. She invoked them in this act of holy vengeance, speaking their full, beautiful elvish names in the clear, bright voice that Maul had first fallen in love with when he was but a boy. As she spoke in that elegant, crystalline tongue, Maul gazed upon her for a final time, taking in her terrible, hateful radiance, a rage-filled beauty that burned hotter than either of that border realm's dual suns. Save his throne, his birthright, his rightful place, there was nothing Maul loved more than this queen, who hated him more than anything else. There were worse ways to spend his life, Maul thought, than losing himself in her shining, hate-filled, indigo eyes, over and over again. As Maul came to terms with the hellish, torturous eternity that lay before him, and as Enleth came to the end of her familial recitation, the air around them suddenly filled with arrows. These were no ordinary missiles. Simple wood and mean metal would be turned away with ease by the elven warrior's sturdy plate, but that was not the case here. No. As Maul watched, positive that his lunacy had returned, the effects of the roiling underneath bubbling up to ease the loss of his life with sweet madness, he saw the glowing arrows stick to the elven armor, melting through the metal with a hiss of camphorous green smoke. Panic struck the elven warriors as they struggled to remove the arrows hungrily burrowing down to their soft flesh. Enleth reared back and growled, "Forest magics!" The arrows piercing her armor, melting the plate away, their poison oozing down to her unprotected skin. Enleth raged, "No! I will not be denied my vengeance! Not by him, not by these primitive degenerates, not by anyone!" She repositioned herself, ready to take Maul's life with a downward plunge of her dagger, but as she raised the weapon, set her eyes aflame and moved to strike, her torso was inundated with another volley of arrows, the force of which knocked her back to the ground. "Your Highness, we have to retreat." Two of Enleth's guards helped the queen up to her feet, fighting all the way, spitting mad. "No, never. I will not be driven back by these cowardly, low-class, forest-dwelling peasants." The elven warriors did their best to fend off the arrows, but their sturdy shields became less effective by the second in the face of those corrosive enchantments, melting the gleaming steel away like a hot knife through butter. Maul, his limbs freed, pushed himself up wearily, glancing around to get a read on the rapidly changing battlefield. Filling the alleyway, numbers increasing as their brothers and sisters nimbly leapt down from the nameless city's rooftops, an overwhelming, heaving, growing mass, an indomitable horde of grinning wood elves, cloaked in worn leather with ancient ancestral bows drawn at the ready. Maul's brain moved slowly, so it took time to do the math, but he could tell that this would be a heated battle, a fight too closely matched to call. Though the wood elves had superior numbers in their enchanted arrows, once Enleth and her royal guard closed the gap, that supple elk leather would do little to turn away the hot bite of steel swung in anger and desperation. An elderly wood elf with a bald pate stepped forward, grinning sadistically as he addressed Enleth and her warriors. "Know this, tyrant. Heed me well, slaves. Though you might best us here, we shall take at the very least one soul with us into the darkness, and it will be the one with royal blood." Enleth shivered with rage, her guard fighting to hold her back, to save her life, to keep her from teetering off her precarious perch into what must be certain death. "The savage is mine. You have no right to take him from me, as you had no right to take our consecrated forests from us. The rest of our confederation has already been summoned, so begone, tyrant, unless you wish for your wicked line to meet its well-deserved end here and now." Reluctantly, Enleth allowed herself to be dragged away. "This isn't over, beasts. Enjoy your time hiding in the forests, chewing on roots and digging in the dirt. I'll be back with my army behind me, and I will raze your forest to the ground as my father once did before me. But know this, he was a merciful conqueror, and I am far from it." With a flash, one of Enleth's warrior mages swung his rune-covered sword, tearing open a rift in space itself. The Queen of the Elves and her royal guard stepped through and disappeared from sight, leaving the blood-stained ground of the marketplace, the chaos of battle, and Maul in the custody of the Wood Elves. As they dragged Maul to his feet, he struggled to form words. Anchor. Please. Goddess damn you, Foreign. All this for an addict, a savage, unkempt junkie. Bald-headed elf Foreign stared into Maul's eyes, then looked deeper, in the way that only the Wood Elves, with flowers in their heart, dirt in their gut, and sap in their veins, knew how. Yes, a junkie, but also something more. Send him to the arbor. The Wood Elves, grumbling, but not daring to disobey their chief, shoved Maul into the darkness of the alleyway. But instead of the filthy, trash-strewn corner he expected, Maul found instead more darkness. He fell and he tumbled, his descent slowed by hands that felt like leaves, his worries eased by the smell of oak, cedar, and pine, and all the while the soft creak of primeval voices whispering in his ear, comforting him, but also steeling him, emboldening him, warning him, blessing him. Words of gratitude for a task not yet performed, a duty not yet upheld, an unnamed heroic feat that remained unknown to Maul. But while he didn't know what that ancient unseen voice had planned for him, Maul knew it must be better than the alternative, which is all a reasonable man can hope for in an unreasonable world. It was with that thought that Maul embraced the unknown, slipping into unconsciousness as he fell out of the massive oak tree, tumbling into a waiting bed of fragrant pine needles. If you're enjoying SKALD, please give it a good review on iTunes, Stitcher, or preferably both. Reviews are a big part of what determines if podcasts get featured or not, so good ones can go a long way to helping SKALD grow its audience. As always, you can find me super easily on social media. Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram, they're all just Aubrey Sitterson. AubreySitterson. No spaces, no numbers. Or you can head over to AubreySitterson.com for links to everything, including social media, my non-SKALD related projects, t-shirts, credits, bio, and contact information. Finally, if you're digging SKALD, please tell your friends in real life, online, anywhere you can find them. Thanks for listening. I'll talk at you next week.